Hey guys, it's Kate from Walk Trot Canner, and today I'm going to be doing a video all about leasing and like all the aspects of it and things like that, because I actually got this video requested, so I figured I'd go ahead and do it. And I know it's been spaced out between my last few videos, and I'm really sorry about that. It's been really crazy. The end of the marking period came up. I'm sure you guys all know. School's been just crazy, and swimming season started. I have to get up at literally 4:30 in the morning to go to swim practice for my high school, and it sucks. But yeah, I'm going to be trying to film videos on the weekend, so hopefully I can get some more up during the week. And I also wanted to thank you guys so much for 1,500 subscribers. Like, that's really insane, and I love you guys so much. So with that being said, I thought I would just go ahead and get into all about leasing. Okay, so first things first, if you don't know what leasing is, maybe you've heard the term used with cars. It's basically renting a horse from an owner. So there's a lot of different types of leasing. There's a full lease, half lease, there's in barn, out of barn, and I'll get into like those later, but basically leasing is just having the responsibility of a horse but not fully being its owner, and it's also a lot more cost effective, which is one of the reasons that a lot of people choose to do it. And if you don't have as much time to fully care for your own horse, leasing can also be a really good option. All the horses that I have ever ridden, except for school horses, I've leased. I've never owned a horse. So I think that leasing is a really good option. So the types of leases are, the most common would probably be a full lease, and that is usually from another barn. So you will see like ads listed on things like Big Ack, Equine Now, wherever you look for horses, and usually there's a just for sale, just for lease, or buy and or lease. So for a lease, it's generally 1/3 of the sale price. So if there's a horse that's, let's say, for example, $30,000 to buy, it might be $10,000 per year to lease. Other people break up the cost by month, but more commonly it's broken up by year. So you have to commit to that horse for a year, and you will bring it in to your barn, and basically the horse will be yours for a year. And from that year, you can either release your horse, send it back to the owner, or do a lease to buy option, which is where if you really like the horse enough and the owner is offering a lease to buy option, you can lease the horse for a year, make sure that you love the horse, and go ahead and purchase it. So there also may be situations where you don't travel out to other barns to look at different lease horses. There might be horses for lease that are at your barn already, and that's mostly what I've been doing. And usually then you will kind of have like a sense of what the horse is like. You'll see other people riding it, of course, if it's been at your barn, and the owner will generally be there. So that's, you can either bring in a horse from another barn, or there may be horses at your barn that I would recommend checking out first if you were considering leasing a horse. So the next kind of lease is half leases. So that's what I've been doing, and that's what I'm doing right now. And basically, you'll have 3 days a week. You can figure out the days with the owner, or maybe there's another girl also half leasing, or boy, whoever. There's another person also half leasing, or it's just you half leasing and then the owner also rides. So that means that you come for your 3 days, but it costs half as much money as a full lease, obviously, if it's half lease, and you don't have the commitment of being there every single day. So besides not having to be there every single day, you also split things like, of course, the lease costs, it's split, it's a half lease, but you also split things like board, vet, farrier bills, etc. And that's really great because when you lease a horse, you pay for the initial lease price, and then you also have to pay for board every month, vet bills, farrier bills, anything on top of that. And it's just nice to be able to split that cost because it can add up, especially if your horse gets injured. So the next thing is finding a lease horse. This is really important if you're doing something like a year lease, because then you're committed to that horse for a year. So I would definitely recommend taking your time. Of course, if you find out that you can lease, you want to get right into it and start leasing as soon as possible. But I would really recommend taking the extra amount of time to really go to different barns with your trainer and look at all your options. Just make sure that once you find a horse that you really like, it's comfortable for you to ride, and it's in your price range, then make sure that the owner allows you to have a trial with that horse, which means you bring the horse into your barn for a week or however long the trial may be. It's generally a week or two, and you make sure that you like your horse, because you don't want to go out, ride the horse once, maybe after the trainer's lunged it for you, and then get to your barn having paid the lease, and you're stuck with that horse for a year, and you realize that your horse is too much for you to handle. So you just want to make sure that you try it a couple of times and also have a trial at your barn to make sure it's the right fit for you. There may be other leases where it's only 3 months or 6 months, in which case it's still important to make sure that you get along with the horse, but it's not as important as a year lease. So for 3 months, maybe you don't have to do the trial for as long, but I would still recommend really getting to know your horse. And yeah. So once you've found a horse, you've trial ridden it, you've brought it to your barn, everything, and you are ready to lease him or her, there is something that I know not all people do this, but I really think it's kind of an essential part, and that is a lease contract. I've had friends that have had leases go fine without contracts, and that's great. Usually if the horse is already at your barn, you may know the owner well. Maybe it's not as important that you get a contract, but I think that it would be best if once you find your horse, that you have a contract that the owner writes up, that you read through, and you make sure that it's very clear what fees you're responsible for. Maybe you didn't know that you were responsible for all of that bills while you're leasing the horse. Maybe the owner said, I'll cover some of them, but they have it in writing, so that if your horse, like God forbid, gets injured, there's not a whole dispute about who's paying what. And it's just very clear and in writing who is responsible for what and when. So most of the leases, I'm pretty sure, have had contracts. My parents mostly deal with that. But I would recommend, if you can, to write up. It doesn't have to be like super long and elaborate, but just make sure that you kind of have a general, like, in writing gist of what you are expected in the lease. So my overall opinion about leases is that it's a really great option if maybe you don't have the financial ability to buy a horse at this point, because God knows horses are expensive. So I think it's a really great cost-effective way to feel like you own a horse, ride a horse, but not having to be as responsible financially and just overall for that horse. And also, maybe you haven't really ridden that much and you're not sure if riding is something you want to continue to pursue, but you think you want to own a horse. I would recommend maybe leasing a horse first for a year and then decide if you're really committed enough to take on the responsibility of owning a horse, which is a whole other thing in itself that is a really big responsibility. And I think that leasing is a good way to either step up to that or kind of make it feel like you are owning a horse but having much less of a responsibility for that horse. So that was my video on leasing. I hope you guys enjoyed and learned a little, and hopefully you guys are considering leasing, because I think it's a really great option. And yeah, leave any requests down below, comment, rate, subscribe, and I'll talk to you guys in my next video. Bye.